That's why I think it's so, and I know I stress this a lot, but if a child is in an activity where it involves physical movement, like if they're in a sport or if they're in dance or if they're in gymnastics, the importance of having a class like yours where it's performance based, it's conditioning, it's understanding body, the simple idea of body mechanics. It's so critical in my opinion, because if they can create, again, that same thing we talked about as you're developing, if you can develop those things as muscle memory from the jump, then that to me is like where you can see the higher end athletes able to do all of these higher level, like have a higher level ability, but also their IQ within whatever they are doing is so much greater because they don't have to focus on the nuance of mechanics. They can move. Like we know a lot of people, I think in the dance world, even where it's like, oh, you move so different and so unique, but it is still safe and it looks correct.
Yeah.
Because the basics of how your body should be moving through space is so ingrained that it would be harder for you to not move that way. So now you can explore all these different unique ways because your knees are still going to be in line with your toes. You're still going to be able to hold posture. You're still going to be able to create force and engage in your core so that you're able to do all of these things and it doesn't injure you or it looks wrong, or you're able to do these things because your body is working with you. That the younger you can do that, it's just ingrained in them deeper and deeper and deeper, that when you have the opposite of that, it's like you have to start from scratch and in a way where their body, their own body mechanics and their own movement style is almost already developed, that you then have to break how they naturally move first. It's like you see an adult and you go to train them. It's like, well, why don't we all just squat the same? Like,
right.
You can see, it's like every squat is a snowflake, it seems like. Like everyone moves so different and so weird because all of your natural ways of moving your body is different. It could be your gait is a little bit bigger. So now this part of your hip is more stretched out. Or you sit down leaning into your right side majority of the time. So now your hips are twisted and your spine is twisted. Like each person does it so different, even though the movement is the same.
Yeah.
It's like if you can break that earlier to where you're just like, this is how you're supposed to move. This is how you're supposed to, this is how you're supposed to move.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you are taking a very simple example, it's like take somebody in ballet. If they can't have the turnout, like you're already so many steps behind. Like just simply you being able to stand there and kind of stand there comfortably with your feet turned out and have everything be in a line and posture, good posture and all that kind of stuff. You take somebody who struggles to even get into that position or hold that position, like they can't do the rest of ballet as good as the person who can.
Right.
And it goes in the same thing of just athletic performance. It's like I can tell which kids are in other sports or other activities versus the ones that are not. And it's not that the ones that are not are solely focused on dance and only do dance. Like a lot of them aren't taking a ton of classes where it's like their body's so formed to dance, because there's those people too where your body's so formed to dance that it's like, oh, you just move like a dancer in every single thing we do. To where more of the case with the kids is like they just aren't as active as the other kids, and you can see the athleticism play out in all of the things that we do. And it's like I mean, even just a general thing of stressing the point of putting your kids in multiple activities, the crossover is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a couple kids that are just in cross country and they're dancers too. That's like, I can tell you just simply you do something else. And all it is that you're doing is running. And it's like your body is moving way more efficiently and you're faster, you're stronger, you have more explosiveness, and it's
your stamina is probably much better.
Your stamina is probably better, and you're just doing cross country. It's like that's not even an explosive sport, really. It's like you're just running for 2 miles, kind of thing. So
I notice that a lot with some of the kids I teach it with are in gymnastics. Like they're, again, going back to their IQ, like their body IQ, and we're talking about young kids. Their ability to pick things up is much quicker. So for kids that maybe even, aren't as skilled with like learning things quickly, like to me, that was me. Like I wasn't really good at picking things up in school, but my ability to understand my body does this, so I need to replicate it like this was quick. Like I could pick up new material very fast. Yeah. And these kids they had the same thing. Like I can see, okay, this person that's maybe just in this class or in a couple of classes, it takes them longer to figure out, okay, well, she's putting her foot here, and then I have to put my arm here when I do that, to where the other kids that are in multiple things, or especially gymnastics, where it's so, you have to know what your body's doing. Otherwise, like there's a danger to it, that they're able to pick up very basic just dance moves quicker, because they're able to just visualize it, see it, and go, okay, my body needs to do this, and I can have that signal be sent to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is just simply repetition. They've done something like it kind of before. And that's just the being in multiple different sports too. You've kind of done this thing before. I mean,
kids that can do most, like a sport can do probably a lot of sports.
Yeah. And they just continue to get more and more repetition of that. You take the person in gymnastics, or you take somebody, like there's a couple kids that play volleyball, and it's like you can just tell, oh, you've moved laterally before. And that's just, now when we're doing lateral drills, you know how to shuffle to the side, and you already know, like, oh, I got to squat a little bit to go over. To where I'm having to explain to some of the kids, like, hey, you can't stand up like a pencil. You have to bend your knees, have a wider base to then shuffle to the side. And that's like a new thing to them, to where the kids that have been doing volleyball or any other sport, that's already natural to them because they've already been exposed to, hey, this is how you do the thing.
I wonder if parents can see that, or if we're just primed to see that because we're teachers of kids with this, like, and personal training and all that. Like,
I think it depends.
I'm in tune to, like, I have to notice how people move.
Yeah. I'm sure it's just how
even 5-year-olds, like even very young kids. Yeah. You're like, oh, I can tell that you do these things, or that like your body is naturally moves in this way. Like I always say that about Alani, our niece. Like she was 2 years old, and I'm like, you're going to be really good at this. Yeah. And same thing with Hayden. Like you're going to be really good at the opposite thing, but you're going to be really good at it. It's like you can tell it a 2-year-old by the way that their body moves. Yeah. And what they can understand of how to move it.
I think there's some of it where just you pay attention to it very closely. But I think it's also, it also just depends on how closely you're paying attention to it. And like we're in a setting where there's 5 to 15, 20 kids in a class. And it's like, it's very obvious when you put them side by side of what kids can do what and what kids can't do what. To where if you're a parent and you're only sending your kid to the class and then you're not watching, you're going to have no idea. Sure. It's just because you're not seeing it. But then at home, you're like, yeah, they actually do this really well. And then it's like,
but in comparison,
they go to a basketball game and they're like, oh, they're not doing as well as they are at home. And it's like, well, because they're not, you don't have 10 other kids right next to them doing the same thing. So it's just, we're able to see it every single week right in front of us. Sure. And then also at the conventions, we see it all weekend.
Hundreds of kids at a time. Yeah.
That's like, you can tell very quickly when they're all right next to each other.
I always say, maybe this is bad, but like during competition or whatever, like you see a kid even just backstage, you can tell just by their body style if they're going to be good or not, and how they carry themselves. Like I can tell by the way a dancer walks if they're going to be bad.
Yeah, well, and I think, again, going back to the video that I just watched, he's taking him through some movements and stuff, and it's like, oh, I can tell that you've never played sports before, because you can't do some of the basic things that he's having you do. Like, even just like, I don't remember what they call them, but just like having your on your hands and feet and then just like doing a step through, I think they called it, where you just take one leg, go through, and like move to the opposite side. And it's like, he is so unstable and so wobbly It's like, that's a very basic
Well, and even for that,
athletic position.
how many people wouldn't be able to connect? Okay, this leg is coming through, so this leg or this arm is coming up.
And he
Like,
struggled
that
with
would be confusing to them.
Like, he had to almost like think about it and kind of move slowly
Yep.
and then get told like, yeah, that's right. So it's, I don't know, it's just a observation that it's like, oh, you can really tell who is, like, I always say that I can tell who's played basketball before. When they grab a basketball, you can tell. It's like, it's just one of those things that it's immediate. You can tell. Have they dribbled a ball? Have they shot a ball before? Even just for, like, did they play in school or have they played recently? Because somebody who hasn't, it's the same thing of like people who get on wheels. You know immediately who has been on a skateboard, rollerblades, whatever, versus somebody who is not.